Okay, hi Sofia.
Hey,
So
James.
I thought we'd start with a little introduction. So I'm James, I'm a psychologist from London,
Mhm.
and
And I am Sofia, and I'm a psychologist from Geneva.
okay. So what we wanted to speak about today are a pretty broad topic, but emotions.
Yeah.
And we wanted to focus on sort of common reactions to emotions. So why people have them, and what they usually do with them, and how they react to them, and whether there are potentially more profitable or better ways to react to emotions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So I guess one of the things I wanted to start with was that one common reaction to emotions that I see a lot are people don't like feeling them, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So particularly certain emotions that we often label negative. Um, and there seems to be a general reaction of trying to block them or avoid them.
Yeah.
So how do you see that, Sophia? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I see that like being totally normal. I
Okay.
mean, as you said, negative emotions, so they are not very pleasant to live, not very comfortable.
Hmm.
And yes, who wants to do something that they are not comfortable in? So I see like a normal reaction for someone to sort of want to avoid them or block them out
Uh-huh.
or just, you know, appear like they are not there.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that this is something that we all do in any
Hmm.
case, and sometimes can actually work, can be like the right solution, maybe for some time, not for a long time, but for some time.
Mm.
And how about you? How do you see this?
Well, I guess for me, it may be slightly different in that I struggle with the concept of a negative
Mm.
emotion
Yeah.
because the way I guess I see emotions is that they're a useful source of information.
Hmm.
So no matter what it is you're feeling, whether it's unpleasant or positive, it's a kind of guide to how well your life is going. So, for example, if I feel consistently negative,
Yeah.
it's the whole purpose of my feeling consistently negative, I would say, is to tell me there's probably something up in your life, James. You need to change something.
Hmm.
Now, the downside of calling that negative for me is if I label that as a negative thing and I avoid it or I try not to look at it, I therefore miss the message that the emotion was trying to tell me, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I can see your point of view. I
Uh,
agree with you. Like you said, I think when we are having emotions that are not pleasant,
yeah,
that is also the opportunity for us to grow in some way.
sure.
So that is the message that they bring. So it's true, labeling them negative, maybe it's not doing justice
Uh-huh.
to those emotions because they are useful, they
Mm.
are there for some reason. And just avoiding them or blocking them, maybe it sort of seems the normal thing to do.
Yeah.
And maybe it's okay if we're doing, for some time, but in the long term, definitely we have missed something
Uh-huh.
that can be very important for our growth and
Yeah.
how our life rolls out.
Mm.
Absolutely. And what do you think? How do you see people doing that? Like, what is
Blocking them?
the, yeah.
Well, I guess there's so many ways right now. I mean, people, I think any emotion people struggle with, the first reaction is kind of, I don't like this. They try and change how they feel,
Mm-hmm.
but in fairly unsophisticated ways often.
Yeah.
So, a blocking reaction is just I go and do something else to make me feel better in the moment. But I guess the whole purpose of emotion for me is maybe the negative feeling I'm feeling is telling me I need to make some sizable changes in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I just block that out by going and do something that makes me happy,
Yeah.
it will return in the future, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess if you don't do those changes, I mean, why would the feeling change? What would
Yeah.
things change? And I think it's interesting you are talking about changing something, because I feel like when we are talking about change, it's sort of equal to difficulty, or I cannot do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes to change means to change something little as well. So it doesn't have to be, something huge. And we can talk about change that happens like externally, but also internally. So maybe it's just changing perspective, or maybe just thinking about things in a new light, in a different light. So this is, in my opinion, why, maybe they are we're not comfortable with those feelings, but why we actually need to look closer to them, because the change can be something that is not, it may require some effort, some time, but it can be doable. And so why not, give it the time that it needs, or the attention that it needs.
But I guess the reason people don't attend to it or give it the attention it needs is precisely because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I guess, the moment is uncomfortable. We have all been there, and I think the moment is very uncomfortable. So we are trying to sort of, take our mind out of it. For instance, keep busy, talk with other people's, talk about other topics. Right?
And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why this whole discussion is so important. That human beings by nature are creatures that always move away from pain. Right? So no, you don't meet a person who says, hey, I'm unhappy and all is good, right? That's wonderful. You meet someone who says, hey, I'm unhappy and I want to change that. So I guess the point for me is that in order to understand yourself better, you have to be willing to stay in places that to a degree will cause you pain. Even to examine them are painful, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't think humans are brilliant at doing that.
Yeah, I guess absolutely. I think we are not used to doing that. Like getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
That comes with an advantage.
So what do you see as that advantage? So that's interesting to me. So, and I guess we're moving on to sort of how you react to the emotions you feel, right?
I think, the advantage is, as we said before, is being able to capture the message and, proceeding into something different, growing out of it. I think that you have to be able to sort of accept the pain that comes with it in order to be able to see beyond.
Yeah.
Right? So if we do not accept the pain, so we're trying to block it out, then, the window, if you want, we can't open and we can't see behind it.
Yeah. So in a way, I like that. I like that. The image I have right now is of a window that's really dirty.
Yeah.
It's so dirty that you can't see through it, right? And to go clean that window is painful. Right? You tell me I've got to clean the window, and I'm like, really? But unless I clean it, I can't see what's out there, right?
Yeah.
And that seems to me a good metaphor for looking at one's own emotions. That in order to see clearly where I should go or how I might react, I have to first do the painful thing of cleaning the window.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry for that. So, yeah, absolutely. But, cleaning the window, as we said, like this, maybe it doesn't sound as painful as maybe, dealing with emotion.
Well, I guess it's the same thing. So cleaning the window is painful because I'm doing work I don't want to do, right? But it gives me a view on the problem. But if I stay with the feeling and I try and understand the pain, to me, that's cleaning the window, right? Once I understand why I feel that pain and where it comes from, it gives me far greater opportunity to then alter my behavior, right? My thoughts, my perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you? Or?
It does, but I'm sort of like thinking at the same moment, I'm thinking that we are, it may be easy for people to understand what is the cause, of their pain.
Uh-huh.
Maybe not, maybe for some people it isn't, but for some maybe
They
quite,
know.
yeah, they know why they are sad, or um, but still, it's kind of difficult to sort of get up and do that work.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that this is the case?
Why it's difficult to do the work.
Yeah.
Well, I think initially it's like we said that examining your own pain is not a natural thing for humans to do.
Mm.
We're taught from a young age, we're taught you move away from pain. You touch the stove, you take your hand off, right?
Yeah.
You don't keep it there and explore. Ooh, that's an interesting sensation, right? You don't do that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I guess exploring it is the first element of it. So to look at your pain is hard, and then to work out a useful response is harder, right?
Yeah. I guess this is the, yeah.
Because you may be constrained in the possible responses. So it's not always the case that you what you will do with that pain is immediately obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like there may be not an obvious solution.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the solution may not be obvious,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe people are also feeling that if I go and I approach this pain and open this little box,
Yeah.
you know, many more things will come out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and maybe some people do not feel prepared for that, and they sort of feel like I can contain it
Mm-hmm.
in this box and never open it and sort of
Yeah.
like deal with it, in a way that is
Yeah.
sort
But
of
I
out of
think
sight.
that's crucial. What you just said,
Yeah.
absolutely crucial. So people containing pain seems easier than exploring pain,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's the uncontrollable element of when you examine your own pain, maybe you find things you don't want to find.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, the larger picture has always been that to examine it is ultimately much more beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, if we go back to the old metaphor of the window, it's like they say, "Yeah, my windows are dirty. I'm just," but out there is pretty dangerous, so I'm not going to clean them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. How do I know what is
Yeah,
behind that, right? Yeah.
yeah. So they stay in a sort of place of blindness to their own feelings because of the fear of the work they have to do to look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's. What do you think? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking about um, sometimes also, remaining with what you know. And obviously, maybe you have those painful feelings, but you sort of, you know, you know how to deal with them. Like we said before, maybe you
mm,
know how to avoid them, or you know how to numb them, or
yeah,
so it's sort of a familiar way of dealing with it,
yeah,
which I agree with you. In the long term, it doesn't really, give you what the
mhm,
best maybe solution, but it's something familiar. It's something I know how to do,
uh-huh,
and it sort of have gotten me here throughout the
yeah,
time. So I remain with what is familiar. So it's another thing. I know I'm not dealing perfectly, but I know I'm dealing somehow with
yeah,
it. I don't have to go and open the box and maybe find something different in
sure,
it. And I also stay away from not knowing what is,
hmm
what my life will be if I
mm,
actually open this chapter.
mm.
So
And I think that's a major thing. So people stay with even painful states that they're familiar with,
yeah.
rather than unfamiliar states that may actually be much better.
Mm.
But there's the scariness of something unfamiliar, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I guess what is interesting is if we start on to move on to a question of what do you see as the way we could move to more adaptive responses to our own emotions?
Mm-hmm.
So how would we, what would represent a better path through the painful feelings we sometimes have, or the great feelings?
I guess, first of all, it's about acknowledging them, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Uh, Sometimes we do not acknowledge them or we don't give them the value.
Mm-hmm.
So we may say, okay, I'm sad, but everybody is sad. Or, some sort of, um, I don't know, presenting it as it's okay to be this way. So maybe first of all, acknowledge that this is how I feel
Mm-hmm.
and accept it. Like sometimes people would get angry with themselves for feeling like that. So this is another block, like
Yeah.
I should put it away because it makes me angry.
Okay.
So maybe also, like accepting it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. Sometimes it's like that. I feel like in acceptance there is a big, big thing because that allows you to talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
to start thinking, exploring, uh, maybe talk about it with other people who have maybe similar knowledge to you. Maybe they have been through the same experiences if it
Mm-hmm.
is related to a specific experience. And you can sort of minimize it
Yeah.
in, oh, okay, this is something that I can manage, whereas before maybe it seemed something,
Mm.
as we said, huge, or something that we don't know behind it, something threatening. So it
Uh-huh.
becomes something that, okay, maybe I can manage that.
Yeah.
So I feel like, acknowledging, acceptance, so the two ways, and then maybe sharing.
Uh-huh. But I think what you just said contains something that is difficult, which is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a big question, which is how do we acknowledge and then accept something that is naturally painful, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a big question for a lot of people. Whilst you and I both know that acceptance is far superior to other responses, I guess a lot of people struggle to accept things that are themselves painful.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I accept my pain, then that's a big thing to do. That's not a trivial, and people are very anti accepting pain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think that sometimes people think that if I accept it,
Uh-huh.
then I allow it to exist,
Yeah.
right? So people will say, no, I don't want to accept it because
Uh-huh.
I don't want, to allow it to be there.
Yeah.
But actually, if you do accept it, that means that you are open to
Uh-huh.
working, towards something
Mm.
else.
But that is, again brings me to a very funny thought, right? Why do we as generally as people think to accept something gives it existence, right?
Mm.
The pain exists before you accept it, right? Otherwise, why are you doing all this stuff to avoid it? All you're really doing when you accept something is acknowledging its presence in your own life rather than running away from it, right?
Yeah, I guess this is it. You make it present.
Hmm.
You say
So you
yes.
make it real.
You make it real. Yeah, yeah.
And I think what's great about this conversation is we've come to a point where I think what we're saying is maybe what people are really afraid of is acknowledging reality,
Mm-hmm.
particularly painful reality.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's like I always see. I think that people have expectations of
Hmm.
ideals. Like ideally, life should be happy and I don't know, giving and so when you have all these ideas, which are very, very good because that gives you a mission, that gives you maybe a goal,
Hmm.
that shows you, some sort of pathway, that you may forget what is real, what is realistic.
Hmm.
And realistic is also those emotions and change and growth and,
Mm.
if you want, our weaknesses. So everything is part of life.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of like changing, this sort of notion of ideal and realistic. Be able to have the ideal that will motivate you, will show you where you want to go or what your values must be, but also be able to be realistic and say, okay, yeah, there is also the other side.
Yeah.
And that's okay as well.
And I guess realistic, what you mean, I think, by realistic is accepting reality for what it is, the presence of both, that sometimes you get great stuff, sometimes you get terrible stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get everything in the middle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But to ignore one at the, to ignore the bad things that happen, I think maybe for me further invites more bad stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because you just remain with those, and maybe there is some growth that you don't benefit from.
Sure.
So if you don't change anything, maybe, your future will probably be the same, right?
Yeah.
It's not very, it's not difficult to understand, to come
Yeah.
to this realization, no?
Well, I guess where we wanted to go with this conversation, I think, was about what are adaptive responses. But I think the whole notion of the process of adapting to circumstances means you have to know where you are in the first place.
Yeah.
So if I want to get to the next town, I have to know where I am now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing where I am now might be painful because I might be very far away in the wrong direction with a broken tire, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I acknowledge that, I'm like, damn, I got to change the tire and then I've got to go drive another 100 miles to get to this town, right?
Yeah. But you have a plan there, right?
Yeah.
So you acknowledge and you say, to do that, to get there, this is what I need to do. So you have clarity.
But
What
I
is
think
missing?
that's the point. Humans seem to be naturally resistant to uncomfortable truths. We seem comfortable with comfortable truths, right? If I'm happy, I don't have a question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
If I have persistent sadness, then there needs to be something I have to look at, which I don't want to look at.
But, I think this also has to do maybe with the way that we process those unpleasant feelings. And, when you are happy, you sort of, let's say, process it maybe for less time, or it's
Yeah.
less, it sort of loses its importance sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you have those unpleasant feelings, they are always there. Sometimes they are exaggerated. So it's also how we are processing the feelings. So yeah, I would make this distinction in terms of how, as humans, we are processing our feelings, and that
But
we
to
may
me,
give.
that's the whole purpose of emotion, right? So unpleasant emotion, the whole purpose of it is like an alarm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a fire alarm, right? We don't ignore it. It's
Yeah.
like telling me there's something in your life that is probably needs altering. Pay attention. But what we do is we, like the fire alarm, we take the batteries out, or we we
You do
smash it
that?
up, right? We smash it up, or we go in front of it with a towel, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's the same reaction. It's an avoidant reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, I think this is a great conversation. So let's finish it off by looking at what we think about adaptation. So how do you said one of the things you said that was interesting is the first step is sort of acceptance. So
Mm-hmm.
acknowledgement and acceptance. So what do you think acceptance gives us that gets us further down the right road?
I guess it gives us clarity in what needs change.
Uh-huh.
I feel that if we accept we are doing something wrong, or we are thinking something in a way that is not functional for us, right?
Uh-huh.
We will sort of become curious of what could I be doing differently, and this would provide some ways, some solution if you want.
Yeah.
So acceptance is very, very important. And acceptance also means not making, not processing the emotion in an exaggerated way, sort of like allowing it to be there because it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
So I accept it, and that's okay.
And I guess as well, acceptance sort of robs the emotion of some of its scary power, right? So
Yeah,
if I accept I feel negative, I'm not running away from it anymore. I'm not as scared of it.
yeah, yeah. It sort of diffuses the emotion, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We often say, I observe that I'm having this feeling
Yeah.
instead of just trying to, contain it or not show it.
Yeah.
So it sort of diffuses the intensity of the feeling. It makes it more manageable.
Yeah.
And obviously, if we can see that, then we get this clarity and maybe further away a plan.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. It suggests options that we didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
So we can maybe see a little. It's like the cleaning of the window. You can see, okay, that's the garden. I could go out there. I could maybe even open the window, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it
And
suggests other things.
how hopeful that is, right?
Yeah. Well, it's
Like
a lot more hopeful than leaving it dirty, right?
exactly, like I have choice. I can do
Yeah.
something. I have power instead
Hmm.
of I'm powerless, right?
But I think that's another crucial element to this. That once the window is clear, once you accept you've done some useful work, you then realize you have more options and you have choice.
Yeah, yeah, that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess the whole key is getting to the point where you realize you have a choice in how you react, but also how you acknowledge things, how you avoid things, and you also have a choice in staying with negative emotions. They perhaps become less negative.
Hmm. And I think it's also the choice of being curious
Uh-huh.
and, feeling like, there is growth. There is, in self-development, there is
Yeah.
something I can do maybe better without any judgment. Just,
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, what could I be doing better here?
Yeah.
So it's about giving you the choice of deciding now
Yeah.
whether I'm continuing like this or I'm taking some other
Hmm.
ways or of doing things.
Yeah. And I guess I feel that's probably a good moment to stop this little video
Right?
because I think we've got to a place where what we're saying is the whole purpose of accepting reality is to get to a place where you see you've got choices.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that a nice message, right?
That's a great message. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Well, thanks, Sophia. So
Thanks,
I'll see
James.
you soon.
Fantastic.
Take care.
You too.